Hi everybody, Karen here at All Fired Up, and we are going to be doing the paper resist today. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to get on. While I'm waiting on that, two things that I neglected to mention in the box that you will need from home are some kind of writing implement, a pencil, or a marker. Anything really works. I'm going to use Sharpies so that you guys can see what I'm doing, but something to write with and a pair of scissors, please. All right, and so we'll give it a minute. Hi, Rose Emma, good to see you today. That's one person here and ready to go. So we're just going to give it a minute. This is the time when if we were live and in person, I would be chatting with you guys about what was going on and what you had hoped to do today. But yeah, that's not happening on Facebook Live. I have two people on. I can't see who the second person is. If you'll just give me a shout out so I know who we're waiting for, that would be great. I've been practicing my social media skills and trying not to be making some crazy face at the beginning of the workshop, especially because that's the one that Facebook always chooses. We'll see how I did today. I have a feeling that it was a nutty face. But it is what it is. So whoever that, oh, it looks like we may have everybody on. For those of you guys who just popped on, I wish that Facebook would let me see who it is. Oh, that's going to be beautiful. Big old finger in the middle of it. My viewers. It just says that Rose Emma is my only person that it's telling me about, which I already knew about Rose Emma. All right, now I'm down to two people. Hi, Angela, that's great. Let's see, who else am I waiting on? I know Donna is joining us because she just gave me a call a few minutes ago. I apologize for being a few minutes late coming on. People see the lights on in the studio and they assume we're open, and it's funny. It's really hard to explain to people that you're online and you really can't chat with them right now. So that's where I was. So I'm going to raise you guys up a little bit so that when we get to the part where you're wanting to look at stuff, you'll be able to see a little more. Let's see if that worked. Nope. And there's, just keeps telling me the same people. All right, I'm gonna go on faith. It says I'm up to 6 people watching. So I'm gonna go on faith that they are some of the people that actually signed up for the workshop. We do get people on here that are watching that did not actually sign up for the workshop, and you are more than welcome to do that. If you watch and then you decide that you want to participate in the workshop, it's still possible to get the supplies from the studio. We have kits that we make up for you, and we have several different pieces for this workshop. Tonight I'm going to do our smallest one, which I forget what size this is, but this is one of our smaller rimmed plates. I'll put a bowl here just to give you an idea of the scale. This is our smallest piece. It's about maybe 7-8 inches across. This is our 11-inch rimmed square dinner. This is a very popular one for this workshop. And then we also have a large platter that you can do. All right, so before we get started today, just in case anybody did not hear me when I mentioned it a few minutes ago. Oh, that's disorienting. They have a little live thing up there and it shows me what I just did. We need a pair of scissors and we need some kind of writing utensil, please. All right. This is a pretty easy workshop in that it's pretty straightforward. The supplies are simple, but the results are really beautiful. This pattern kind of reminds me of a quilt. There's a quilting technique in Hawaii that they do that is part of the culture that has these beautiful biomorphic shapes. That's kind of what I was going for when we did this one. Hi Donna, hi Cynthia, good to see you guys. Let's see, who are we missing? All right, I think Sarah may be watching later. Sometimes Sarah comes on and watches it after it's recorded, which is another thing to mention. Those of you guys who are watching who do not have the workshop kit in front of you, it's not too late. This is recorded in all of its unedited glory, and you can always do the workshop later. Like I said, we do have the kits in the studio, and you can go to our Facebook page and pull up this video at any time and do it. So we're going to go ahead and get started. It's unusual, but I wasn't here when most of the people picked up their kits, so I have no idea what color options you chose. It's going to be fun seeing everything. I really love watching the stuff come in and seeing what you guys do with it. A lot of times it's something that I haven't even thought of. Slightly different take on it. Angela Palick is famous for that, and it's really cool to watch. So today, and I feel like I'm saying a lot. It's going to take me a few minutes probably to calm down. There I go again. Anyway, back to your colors. I did not see what colors you guys chose, but as you can tell from looking at this, this is another one of the resist projects that we do. We do a lot of this technique, different versions of it. We've done in the studio. At some point I want to do wax resist with you guys. That's one that's really, really beautiful. But the lighter color, hopefully you guys picked a lighter color and a darker color. You're going to want the lighter color underneath, and you're going to want the darker color on top. And something else is the last couple projects that we've done in here, I've had you paint the entire piece because we did not dip it when it came to back to the studio, because whatever the technique was so thick that we didn't want too much glaze on there, which is kind of a fancy word for the paints that we use with the pottery. We didn't want too much glaze on there, so I had you guys paint the whole piece so that I didn't have to dip it. If you turn this piece over when you're in the studio, you'll see that the back is white. The reason for that is this piece we dip. So you don't have to worry about if you're one of the people who have had bald spots and we've refired it for you because we've told you it was glaze starved. That's something that you don't have to worry about at all with this project. It's going to turn out hard and shiny, and it'll be good to go. Okay, so I'm going to tilt it down just a little bit so that you guys can see, and there I go. Let me move these out of the way. Here's my piece. I put my lighter color on my palette. You guys have cute little palettes in your kit, I think. You can use a paper plate. You can use, when I'm at home a lot of times I like to use a ceramic plate, just like the way the paint slides on them. That's my personal thing. I'm a little, you know, everybody's got preferences and quirks. So I'm going to take my lighter color and my large brush. You guys have much larger brushes than I do, so this will go a little bit faster for you. And I'm going to do a coat. If you were in the studio, we would have you sponge this first to get the dust off, and also to prime the piece. You may have heard us say prime the piece. And what that sponging does is it just gets the piece a little bit less dry. The ladies amongst us that have had their hair dyed, you know how the hairdresser will wash your hair first and then dye it. That's not really to get necessarily to get it clean before they dye it. It's more so that the piece, or so that your hair absorbs the paint evenly. If you look at this, you can see that it's not absorbing that evenly, and that's why, because I didn't sponge it first. It doesn't really matter, but if that really bothers you when you're dragging the paintbrush across, you can kind of dip your paintbrush in the water for the first coat and put it on. That is going to mean that that coat is going to be thinner, which is something to think about. All right, so you guys are working out of your cups probably of paint, and we're just going to do this. So I'm going to keep going with this. I want one nice coat on here. This is going to dry super fast because this bisque is going to just suck up the paint because it's so dry. We do want to cover the whole surface because we don't know where underneath is going to show through yet. All right. I'm letting that dry. While I'm letting that dry, I'm going to let you guys paint. While that is drying, I'm going to hop up for 1 second and grab some pieces. So that while we're waiting on the next coat, can do a little bit of advertising. Okay. So my first coat is actually just about dry. I'm going to go ahead and squirt some more paint out just so that I can be ready for my next coat. I think I'm going to put it over here so I don't keep crossing across the thing. I'm going to do another coat. We're going to do 3 coats of this underneath color. They don't have to be super thick coats. It's actually probably better if they're not super, super thick. And since you guys are at home, I can't watch you. Don't do any bad habits like pouring the paint right on the pottery. The reason that we don't, I did that all the time when I was in college. That's kind of the way I learned to do it. But we were not using underglazes then. Back in the day, we used something called a true glaze. These colors that we use here at All Fired Up that we call paints are actually what's called an underglaze. And if you pour the underglaze into the piece or on the piece and then spread it around, most of the time, in all honesty, it's going to work out okay. But the reason that we don't like you doing that is because I said most of the time. There's always there's a decent chance that you'll get it too thick in some areas. And if that happens, something called peel back, which I've mentioned already tonight, can happen. And what peel back is when the paint is too thick and it heats up in the kiln, it can't stick to the pottery piece and it kind of almost crawls into like little clumps. And then you'll have raw pottery even though you've put plenty of paint on. The problem is it's actually too much paint. So it's kind of like the pottery equivalent of overwatering a plant. It seems like a good idea to give it plenty of water, but you know, in actuality, it's not good for the plant. So that's my second thinnish coat. I'm gonna let that dry. And I'm gonna talk to you about next month. Next month on March 8th is the International Day of the Woman, or Woman's Day. And coupled with that, this is a woman-owned business, so we really, you know, we're kind of into that kind of thing. But coupled with that, we also have these absolutely adorable head vases in the studio. I'm going to show you the ones that we normally carry, We normally carry these tall ones. Having a supply chain issue on these, so originally we had thought we would use these. Because of the supply chain issue, we have little petite ones, which I think are actually even cuter. So we're gonna package them up in the kit, and you know, you could paint them any way that you want, but to give it a little bit of a workshop kind of feel, besides doing it together on Facebook Live, I'm also going to do up templates for whoever your hero is. So this one is Frida Kahlo. There's a beautiful quote from her on this one. These are extras. You can get these pretty much anywhere. They're fake. We're famous for overwatering, so yeah, ours are fake. This one over here is RBG. So that just gives you an idea of two that you could do. But when you sign up for the kit, we're going to ask you who you would like, who is your hero, and I will do up a template for you to just kind of make it easier on you in case you would like to do that. Of course, as always, you can always do whatever you want. You don't have to use the template. But we thought that would be a fun way of celebrating, and I'm really kind of looking forward to seeing what everybody chooses as their person that they want to paint. One that my boss was thinking about was medical personnel. They are definitely taking the brunt of things right now. Doing one with in, you know, full PPE would be kind of cool. If you've got a hero and she's got a great quote, we can include that on the template. So that is what we're doing next month. And kind of, besides being besides being Women's Day, it also, hopefully by March 8th, it'll be a little bit more spring-like in feel, and we'll be excited to have that happening. Okay, so I just started my third coat. In retrospect, I really shouldn't have done that. That's what happens when I start talking. So if you've done 2 coats, please stop, sit it aside. We're going to talk about the next step. The next step, if you've done 3 coats, though, don't panic, because I'm going to show you what to do if you've done 3 coats, because I did 3 coats. So the next step is doing this pattern. I love symmetry. When I was an art teacher in the public schools, I had a symmetry lesson at every single grade level, from preschool on up through high school and adults. I always, I love symmetry. I just think it turns out really beautifully. So to get this, it's basically like making a snowflake. You've got 2 of these in your kit. You only need 1. The reason I gave you 2 is because I didn't want you to feel stuck if you didn't like your first one. Also, if you do 2, then you can pick the one that you most prefer out of the 2 of them. So now we're going to do our pattern on this. Okay, we're going to make a pattern with this. They're also already cut to size, and they are folded for you. When you're doing it, this is pretty obvious, but just to make sure, you want to make sure that you know where the point is, because that's going to be the middle of the piece. Okay, and where it opens will be the edges. So I'm going to hold it, and I'm going to put it down with the point facing towards me. That is the middle, and the open edges I'm going to face away, just so that I can keep track of it. And I'm going to draw a pattern on there. You can do whatever you want. If you want something like this, you're going to want to use some soft edges. And you're also going to want to be conscious of working off of this point and also off of this point, so that you get some really cool negative spaces in here. So I'm going to draw kind of like a half leaf pattern here. And then I'm going to bring it down along the fold. And I want to change it up on this part here. For what I want to do, I'm going to do like a little bulb out. And I think I'm going to do a big bulb right here. So that's my pattern. And this one will actually turn out pretty similar to this. That's what that looks like. That's going to be my first one. I'm going to cut that out. So when I do the kids workshops, I do them with Google Meets also because they are not as good at typing as a rule, although some of these kids can really, they're way faster than I am and definitely way more tech savvy. But I do Google Meets with them because that is what they're used to doing at school. Most of the schools in our area use something called Google Classroom, which is really just like it's like Google Meets for the school system. So I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to be careful about keeping my points together. They kind of slip and splay out on me a little bit. If it's an epic fail though, that's why I have two pieces. So push this back. Out. Anyway, I do Google Meets with the kids, but with the adults, most of you guys, when I taught workshops in person, most of the adults would just not really talk anyway. So we just stick with the Facebook Live for the adults. But if you should happen to have a question, I have this tilted so that you can see my hands. But since it is my only camera, the hand cam is my only camera, you get a lovely view of my chin, something that nobody sees anymore because of the mask. But I do it that way so that I can also see if you guys have any comments. If there's a whole bunch of comments on there, it could potentially get skimmed by. So if I don't answer a question, if you ask a question, which please do if you have any, and I don't answer it, go ahead and ask it again because it just means that it skimmed past before I actually saw it. So this is my pattern. I kind of like that one. I'm going to try something else on this one just to see. This used to drive the kids crazy when I was teaching. Because I'm like, yeah, that's beautiful, try again. Because you never know if you're gonna like the second one better unless you do the second one. So this one, I think I'm gonna go a little more geometric. I'm gonna use the edge of the paper there. And I am gonna do a curve here. And I think I'll do a heart shape here. This one is going to look more like a snowflake. And I don't know, maybe I might even cut something out right there. What else do I need? Guess I'll do a curve down here. I think I know which one I'm going to like better, but I'm going to cut this out anyway just to see if I'm wrong. So you guys do the same if you have one that you think go ahead and do another one even if you have one that you think you like. Or if you like the first one that you did and there's just like you wish you had done some of the shapes fatter, you can do the same, basically the same design again and just kind of adjust that and make them a little bit fatter. So I'm going to leave that one sitting there, and I'm going to cut this one out and see what I think of it. Way back in the day when I first started working here, we would have movies with our summer camps, and one summer we did princesses and pirates and other things like that, and we watched that movie that tells us to relax and let it go, and we did something similar to this, and we actually made those look like snowflakes on purpose because that movie had a winter theme to it. So here's my other one. And I do actually kind of like that. So now I can't decide which one I want to use. I need to decide which one I want to use. And I think I'm actually, even though I really like that one, I think I'm going to go with this one just because then I have a set in the studio of ones that are similar. So I laid this out on here, and one of the things that I'm noticing is that this part goes all the way to the edge, which is fine if I want it to, but if I don't want it to, or if I want to change anything else up in the pattern, now is the time to do it. I'm going to fold this up again. This is totally optional. This is just showing you how to adjust it a little bit if you want to. And I'm happy with my longer arm, but I think that I want this bubble here just a little bit shorter. So I am going to go ahead and cut that shorter now, if I can. I'm going to hold this one out of the way. So everybody has 2 coats. If you're like me and got carried away, you may have 3 coats. And we've got our patterns. So here comes the next step. I'm going to slide this out a little bit so I have a little bit more room to work. The next step is getting this pattern adhered on here, and this is how you do it. If you've only painted 2 coats, you're going to go ahead and you're going to do a 3rd coat. Okay, if you've done 3 coats, I kind of did 2.5. I did 2 and then but I didn't do all the spots. So if you've done 3 coats, instead of making it thicker, just go ahead and dip your brush in the paint or in the water and wet your plate, okay? Make sure you get the whole thing wet. If you've got one with rims, sorry about that. That probably sounds horrible through the camera. If you've got one with rims, make sure that you get those rims wet. So I've got this nice and wet. I have been pretty careful about being neat with my brush strokes, just because I'm not positive if any of them are going to show. While this is wet, I'm going to take this pattern and I'm going to try to line it up. I'm going to start with my corners, get them on there good. Then I'm going to press down from the middle when I've got it pretty much lined up. I'm going to press down. I'm going to use that pottery paint to kind of hold it down. Okay, if you've got a rim, you want to start from the middle and push it all the way out to the rims, and then kind of force them down a little bit. You might have to finagle it a little bit. When you've got it the way you like it, you're going to take your brush and soak that paper, and that will help it go all the way down. Okay? Rachel Davidson. Okay, she is not in the workshop. That's just a crazy coincidence. so I'm soaking it down with the brush. It kind of starts, this is kind of like Mod Podging almost, in that you want it wet underneath. We're using the paint to get it wet underneath, and then you want it wet on top. For Mod Podge, that's to get it shiny. For this, it's to get it adhered well. So I'm going to paint this down. And you want to work pretty quickly. You want to keep working from the middle. You want to work pretty quickly to get it all down before it starts to dry out underneath. If it does start to dry out underneath on you, just kind of, if you really add a little bit of water to it, that will get it stuck down really good. All right, so I've got my middle part stuck down really good. Now I'm going to go around and I'm going to do my insides, or my edges rather. And first I'm going to do the middle ones just because they don't have any little bends because they're not at the corner, and I think they'll stick down easier. Get all them down. You may have noticed when I'm wetting my brush to get this stuck down, I'm not cleaning my brush out. And the reason for that is because this is the color that I want there anyway, so there's really no need. Okay, so I've got all of them, all 4 of them down. You can see that. Let me tilt that up so you can see it. I do have a little bit of wrinkling going on. I'm going to kind of push them. Get as much of the wrinkle taken care of as I can. I'm also going to go ahead and do these other ones. And there's going to be some wrinkling in them. That's okay. This does not need to look like a commercially made dish. It's not a commercially made dish. It is a handicraft. And they should all be different and unique anyway. We used to have a sign about how imperfections were not imperfections. They were just you know, the individuality and the uniqueness of each piece. Now we have a sign that's a quote from Bob Ross about there's no such thing as a mistake, only happy accidents. And this is kind of the happy accident project. You're going to have some wrinkles in it. It's going to be okay. That is really dry, so I'm just going to slap a little water behind it so that it sticks down better. Holding this up close to you guys. Yes, I am using water. Sorry about that, Rose Emma. And thank you, Donna. You're right. I am using water. I did the 3 coats of paint underneath, just to review at this point. We did the 2, then we cut out our pieces. Then we did the 3rd one, and while it was wet, we laid it down. But unless you're super fast and way more coordinated than I am, you're not going to be able to get it down before it dries out. So I just did the best I could getting it down, working from the middle and working my way out. And then when it started to dry, I took my brush and I dipped it in the water and I just brushed the water right on top. And when I'm doing that, first I'm going to make sure that that middle part is nice and flat, or as flat as I can get it. You can see that there are some wrinkles in here. Part of that's because I'm not coordinated, and part of that is because the paper does stretch a little bit, and that's okay. The only thing that you want to be sure of is you want to be sure that when it's at the edge, like right here, that you smooth that down with your finger, kind of press it down with your finger. Because we don't want, it's kind of like when you mask something out with masking tape. When you're painting the walls, if you've got the wrinkles, it the next color can potentially go under it. So I did that middle part, then I went ahead and I did these pieces because they're easier. And then I kind of worked these pieces. And if you look at mine, you can see that they're pretty seriously wrinkled, but it's okay. I've got a little bit of wet here that's still pooling, so I'm going to wait for that to dry just a little bit. When it's not really dry, but it's no longer, you can see drips, you are ready for the next step. Okay, in preparation for that, or while you're waiting on that, go ahead and press down those spots that are sticking up. Use your finger to do that. Don't worry about the big bubbles in the middle. Like I said, they're not going to matter. Just worry about the edges where it could potentially bleed underneath. So go ahead and press those spots down. Rinse your brush out really good. Especially if you have a different color. You want to rinse your, like an entirely different color. Like this one here, I did bright green and I did a turquoisey green. This one I'm doing orange, and I'm going to do like a dark peachy orange called Arizona Sun that we have. So they're pretty similar, so I don't have to worry about having my brush 100% cleaned out. But if you say we're doing blue and then doing red on top, you want to make sure that your brush is clean. And you may want to, depending on how picky you are, you may want to go ahead and clean your water out. Get a fresh water. If you do want to get fresh water, this is the time to do it. I'm going to soldier on. All right. So before we go on, making sure that it's all pressed down, like I said, making sure that it is adhered at the point where the rim starts if you've got a piece with a rim, because that can lift up a little bit. And you want to make sure that that is stuck down really nice. You're very welcome, Rose Emma. Okay, next color, I've got my Arizona Sun. I'm gonna go ahead and squirt myself out a generous pile of that. You guys can use your palette if you'd like, or you can just work right from your little dishes of paint. Now, if you've ever done stenciling and had it go underneath, you know how frustrating that can be. I'm going to show you a trick. There are spots where it may go underneath, and that's just, like I said, not a mistake. It's a happy accident. This one, I think this sample turned out really well, and I still have some spots where it went underneath. That being said, you probably didn't even notice that when you were in the studio looking at the piece. We tend to be a lot more critical of our own stuff. One of the things you can do, though, to make sure that you don't have that happen is start from the middle and pull out, okay? And just be really careful to kind of almost, I've seen people, some people will actually tap the paint on. You can do that. Be careful not to tear your paper stencil. So that's one technique you can do. You can tap the paint on. And if you do brush, be careful to brush away from the middle, because that will keep it peeled or stuck down better and keep it from peeling up. Okay? So you're going to go over, do a nice lightish coat, gentle, pretend it's like putting on makeup. You don't want to be rough with the paper, because it really is only a little bit thicker than a tissue paper. So I tried this with tissue paper when we first developed this technique, because I thought, oh well, that would be really good, because sometimes the tissue paper has a little bit of a sheen to it, and I thought it would make it a little bit sturdier. But actually what it did was it kept it from absorbing. So I'm going to do that tapping thing I was talking about, just because I don't have much patience, and that's a good technique for somebody without patience. Uh-oh, see, mine peeled up there. So that's going to probably be a little bit of a flaw in my design. But I'm going to lay that back down and hope for the best. You might see this lifting up a little bit when I brush. Okay, so showing you how to press it down again. I can't actually show you. I can do it right on the table. That's what I'll do. So you've got your piece, and it's nice and wet, okay? You did your 3 coats while the 3rd coat was wet. You're going to lay this down. Press from the middle I think that was Rachel that asked that question. I can't remember who asked that question. Oh, Angela asked that question. Press from the middle while it's wet, Angela. It's probably going to dry before you get it all the way down. So then take your water and just press it or brush it out. This actually is a lot easier to see on the table what is happening. So that's just a review for you guys. That's how you get it down. And when you're doing it, be really conscious of the spots where the rim curves up, and make sure that you get it down in those areas. The best thing to do is to work from the front, the middle, work your way out. When you get to the rim, concentrate on the rim, or the little curve of the rim, and then do the very outer edge last, okay? And once you have it stuck down with just the water, I'm going to peel that up just to get it out of the way. Once you have it stuck down with the water, you're going to wait for the worst of the sheen to go away, the puddles to go away, but while it's still wet, you're going to go ahead and kind of tap on a coat of the paint, the darker color. This spot right here keeps picking up on me. We'll see what that looks like when it's done. I'm imagining it's probably going to be fine. Now right here, my natural tendency is to pull towards me, but if I do that, those pieces are going to curl up. So I'm going to turn my piece so that it's more natural for me to brush in the direction of the pattern of the stencil. And I'm going to tap especially down in those areas where the rim curves, because tapping is a lot less likely to pick it up. All right, so that's my first coat of my top color. Made sure I got it on there real good. I'm going to let that dry mostly, and then I'm going to go ahead and do another coat. These are pretty thin coats. When you're in the studio, we talked to you about how many coats to do. You know that 3 coats makes it solid. And you know that we usually say not to go above 5 coats. And the above 5 coats thing is so that it doesn't, or not going above that is so that it doesn't peel back, that thing when it all crawls across it. We had a piece in here for a while that somebody had done that had really bad peel back on it, and I kind of wish we had saved it, because if we had it and could show it to you, it would be a lot easier to understand what we're talking about. Maybe someday I'll do a piece that peels back on purpose. Just kind of go to town with it. All right, so I'm letting that dry just a little bit. Resist the urge to hit it with a hairdryer or anything like that. That's not really a good idea with pottery. It dries unevenly, and it doesn't work as well as you would hope it does because of that, the uneven drying. So on a normal piece, I would say this would be the time to flip it over and do whatever it is you want to do on the back. On this piece, I'm going to say don't do that, because this stencil is a little bit fragile and we don't want to lose it. All right, so that is pretty dried out. So actually it's not. I'm just not patient. I'm going to wait another minute. All right. So, Angela, you have a question mark? Oh, does the whole thing need to dry before you do the top coat? No, it does not. You want it to be not puddly, because you don't want the undercolor to mix with the top color, but it can still be a little bit damp. Like when we did the wet etching project, how it was still a little bit damp when we did the next coat, kind of like that. So you'll see it's wet, it won't have that chalky look, but it's not soupy wet, and it's not super wet, if that answers your question. Like this one right here, this is my top coat, my first coat of my top coat, and you can see that there are some spots right here that are still kind of puddly, so I'm waiting on them. You would do the same thing for the before you do the top coat. When the undercoat is no longer puddly like that, when it's just wet like right here or like over here, then you're ready to do the second coat, or to do the top coat. So once this hits that stage where it's not puddly, which I'm pretty much at, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. The first time it does that, you're going to do your first top coat. Then when it's damp but not puddly, you're ready to do your second coat on the top coat. And 2 coats on the top coat is where I usually stop. And since this is still a little bit wet, the paint is dragging really nice. It's not, I don't want to paint this really super thick because I don't want it to bleed underneath, and painting it super thick is one of the ways that I'll do that. But since the piece is still damp, I'm not getting that scratchy brush feel, is what I was trying to say. I'm going to pick up some of this paint with my brush. If you get too much paint in an area, just kind of dry your brush out a little bit and then sit your brush down there, and the brush will wick it away. Okay? And if you're wondering what too much paint is when it's so thick that you can tell that it's just going to crawl right under there. All right. Since we chose a darker color, 2 coats will probably be enough. If you feel like it's super streaky, go ahead and push it to 1 more coat. But if it doesn't look streaky on you, there's not really any need to do 1 more coat. That being said, I think I'm going to wait 1 minute and do 1 more coat. So I'm going to let that dry out a little bit, and then I'm going to do 1 more. I'm trying to think what some great heroines would be for next month. I love Frida Kahlo. She's really cool. Georgia O'Keeffe is a neat one, but it does not have to be an artist. I thought it might be fun to even do Wonder Woman. So if you really love Wonder Woman, like, there's a wonderful organization in our area called Angels Outreach, and they help victims of domestic violence and at-risk families. And the lady that runs that loves Wonder Woman. So if she were to sign up for the workshop, I would imagine she would want to do Wonder Woman. So it's heroes, real, or a cinematic. I'm not going to say pretend, because I think that the spirit of Wonder Woman is very, very real. So yeah, try to think of a great heroine, or you can just do a generic woman or a beautiful woman. You could do a self-portrait. That might be fun on next month's. Okay, so maybe it's the hot air of me talking, but I think I'm ready to go ahead and do my last coat. And this one's going to be thin because I don't want to get too much paint on there, because I am a little bit concerned about that peel back. Tapping where I need to get it to the middle, up against the rim. All right. The last step for the front is going to be peeling this up. And you could honestly leave it on there and we can peel it up for you. So if you have problems with it sticking anywhere, don't worry about it. We'll just peel it up when it gets here. But I'm going to paint the edge of my plate. And if you were in the studio, oh, Alyssa is the best, Rose Emma. You crochet for them? What do you crochet for them? I'll wait and see what her response is. While I'm waiting on Rose Emma to answer me, Normally we would use a sponge in the studio to do the edges, and you just tap, tap, tap with the sponge. You guys don't have a sponge in your kit. Although I finally swiped one from the studio and took it home for my at-home workshops. Every once in a while, like last week, I did the kids' workshop from home because I was quarantining because my high school senior needed to go on a college visit, and I needed to take him. So following protocols, we're really safe about that here. I love working someplace that lets me be safe and does not penalize me for it. I did all my workshops from home last week. So anyway, I have a sponge at home. Since you guys do not probably have a sponge at home, I loaded my brush and I'm just gonna tap it. I'm not actually even brushing, I'm just tapping. And that tap will give me the same effect. Not quite necessarily as beautiful as the sponging, although I tend to use the brush a lot because I usually forget a sponge. You can just tap. When it gets full, or when it gets empty rather, go ahead, load it up. Just kind of drag your brush so that the paint ends up on the side of it, because you're not using the bristles, you're just tapping with the sides of the bristles. And I'm going to tap this side. It probably is easiest to do the side that is facing you. I was trying to do the other side so that you guys could see what I was talking about. It's kind of funny as a teacher, you get used to doing everything backwards, and then when you're by yourself painting, I still paint backwards so that my imaginary audience can see what I'm talking about. Alright, so that is just a purely optional. I wanted my rim to look nice, so that is a trick for doing that. Now we're ready to do the reveal. This is still a little wet, but that's okay. I'm gonna take my toothpick and I'm just gonna kind of slip it under a spot on my stencil, and I'm gonna pull up. If your stencil tears, that's okay. You can always, I'm gonna actually tear this on purpose because I can always pull up a different spot. And the advantage of tearing it on purpose is that I don't have to worry about this spot that's in my hand flapping around and sticking to anything. So I'm pulling that up. You can see from my reveal that I've got a spot over here that's stuck. Lap afghans for kids and chair folks, and scarves. That's what Rose Emma crochets for them. So I'm gonna pick another, I'm gonna take my toothpick and I'm gonna pull another spot up because this tore. So this organization that Rose Emma and I are talking about, they do all kinds of stuff. Coming up, they'll probably be doing Easter baskets for the kids and for the veterans. And it's a great organization if you're looking for something to get involved with. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. You can volunteer with them. You can do stuff from home. You can donate items. So this is mine. I've got a couple spots that, just to show you that when I'm saying it's okay if it bleeds a little bit underneath and you're like, yeah, but yours didn't, and I don't want mine to. Mine actually did. I've got some bleed spot right here and a little bit there. I'm just gonna leave them. I'm not gonna worry about it. I could technically go back with a small brush and touch them up. I don't like to do that because right now these imperfections look like they're the result of the technique. If I go back and touch it up, depending on how thick this is underneath, it may or may not show. My luck, it always shows. And then it looks like I messed up because that brings attention to it. So if I leave it like this, it just looks like those imperfections are part of the technique. If I go back and fix it, if I get all fussy, then that tends to make it worse. So I'm not gonna touch mine up. That being said, this is your piece. If you have any spots that have bled, you do what you want, okay? When this is completely dry, I'm gonna flip it over and I'm going to do my name on the back. And this is not completely dry,
So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys on a piece of paper because that's going to take a minute, or is it? No, I think it's actually fine. I'm going to flip this over. Wait for yours to be dry though. I'm just going to flip this over so that we can go ahead and get started on this last part. So Rose Emma says that they are collecting their Easter goodies. I really feel for Alyssa and her crowd there because this is a tough time. It's hard to be on people's minds. Like if we were more open right now, you know, if things were open, people would be realizing that, you know, they'd be seeing her out in action and be helping out more. So, great organization. They're in Pittman if you'd like to donate. And we need to sign these pieces so that we can get them back to you. You have two choices. One is you can wait until you come into the studio and use the paints here and a fine brush here to sign it. Actually, you have three choices. Another one is if you've got a nice fine brush at home, you can go ahead and sign it at home. Whenever it is that you sign it, though, you want to use paint. The reason I did not put a fine brush in the kit is because the fine brushes that we're able to get in right now, they're not really attractive for signatures. They're a little bit too rough and a little bit too, they spread out. And something that I've found that actually works better is to take that toothpick, really dip it in the paint. And in the past, we've scratched into things when we painted the back. If you paint the whole back for any reason, which if you would like to, you're more than welcome to do that, just take the toothpick and scratch in. But if you don't want to paint the whole back, take the toothpick and pretend it's a pen. Dip it in the paint like it's a quill, and go ahead and just start signing it. We always sign the samples here, paint at allfiredup.com. You do have to load it a decent amount. But you can sign it just fine this way. It takes a little bit longer than paint, or than a paintbrush. But this looks, I found this looks so much better than using a brush that is too big. So these are colored toothpicks, so if you find that it's just the color of the toothpick, then you need to add some more paint, because that will burn off just like the marker that we use here. So there, I've got mine started. And you can see, even though it's a toothpick and backwards on your screen, using the toothpick like a little pen dipping, or like a quill pen dipping it in the paint works just great. So that is the last step for today. I'm going to hold this up so that you can see it a little bit more looking at it. I don't know if you guys can see it or not because your comments are across my screen, but you can see some of the spots where I had wrinkles. It's created some streaks. They may or may not show up after the firing. I've seen it where they've shown up and it looks beautiful. I've seen it where they haven't shown up and that also looks beautiful. It's kind of, you know, it's just it's a one-of-a-kind artistic technique. So it's, you know, up to you as to which, or it's actually not up to you. It's actually up to your paint piece. But both results look good, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So that's the technique for today. If you are the kind of person who pushes everything a little bit far, something that you can do, that you can always paint the back rim of your piece. If your pieces, most of these pieces have a back rim, you can paint that if you'd like. I didn't on this one, and I didn't on this one, but you can. You can, if you've got another piece of paper, I may have put 3 in. I can't remember how many I put in your kits. But you can take little shapes and do that technique around the rim. That could look really cool. Or you could paint your rim solid. So that is it for today. I hope that you guys had a great time. I can't wait to see these pieces when they come back. And if you watch the workshop and are interested in participating in it, just give the studio a call to order the kit, or you can actually go to our website and order the kit, and you have the choice of the 3 different sizes. Thank you, Rose Emma. Thank you, everybody else. Thanks, Angela. I will see you guys later, and have a great and safe night. Look forward to seeing you all in person. Bye-bye.